En mai 2015, le pape François publie Laudato Si sur la sauvegarde de la maison commune, une encyclique portant sur les changements climatiques dans lequel il prononce « Je me propose spécialement d'entrer en dialogue avec tous au sujet de notre maison commune ». Ce film souligne le 5e anniversaire de l'encyclique Laudato Si et revoit quelques-unes des importantes réflexions qu'on y retrouve tout en mettant à jour les enjeux climatiques survenus depuis 2015. Dans le film Laudato Si, A Canadian Response, le docteur David Suzuki a été interrogé au sujet de la science derrière l'encyclique du pape François.
What he has done is in the best tradition of Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson was a writer, and what she did was look at the big picture. You know, generally we say, does DDT have an effect? Oh, well, what's the effect on this field? What Rachel Carson showed us was, yeah, you spray it on fields, but wind blows, it rains, and you end up affecting fish and birds and human beings. Generally, scientists are so focused, they're only looking at it in that little bit. What he has done is broaden it out. I think he's done something very, very profound. And the science, as far as I'm concerned, is impeccable.
En décembre 2015, lors de la Conférence des Nations unies sur les changements climatiques à Paris, le Canada s'est joint à 193 autres pays en signant l'accord climatique et en s'engageant à réduire ses émissions de gaz à effet de serre. En 2017, le secrétaire général de l'ONU, Antonio Guterres, a répondu à la décision périlleuse de l'administration Trump de retirer les États-Unis de l'accord climatique de Paris.
Climate change is a direct threat in itself, but a multiplier of many other threats, from poverty to displacement to conflict. And the effects of climate change are already being felt around the world, and they are dangerous, and they are accelerating. And so my argument today is that it is absolutely essential that the world implements the Paris Agreement and that we fulfill that duty with increased ambition.
Le 20 janvier 2021, le monde entier s'est vu soulagé lorsque le nouveau président américain Biden a déclaré que les États-Unis rejoindraient l'accord climatique de Paris. Depuis 2015, la planète a été témoin de nombreux événements. Parmi ceux-ci, la fonte des glaciers du Groenland qui contribue à la hausse du niveau des océans et les incendies qui ont ravagé la Californie et l'Australie, causant de grandes pertes de propriété ainsi que d'effroyables pertes de vie et d'habitat pour plusieurs espèces animales. Les manifestations ayant pris place à travers le monde ont fait des enjeux climatiques une priorité des agendas politiques dans la majorité des pays. En 2018, le groupe intergouvernemental sur l'évolution du climat, parrainé par le Programme des Nations unies sur l'environnement, a publié un rapport spécial sur les effets d'un réchauffement planétaire de 1,5 degré Celsius au-dessus de la température pré-industrielle. La projection inquiétante offerte par ce rapport indique que nous avons moins de 10 ans ou jusqu'à 2030 pour éviter les pires conséquences du réchauffement planétaire en évitant une hausse de 1,5 degré Celsius. Sinon, en mai 2020, le Dicaster, ou département du Vatican, pour le développement intégral des personnes, a fait l'annonce de la venue du 5e anniversaire de l'encyclique prophétique Laudato Si. Ce film est en réponse à cet anniversaire. Le père Jostrom Isaac Carithodam, un prêtre silésien et cosmologue, est coordonnateur du secteur pour l'écologie et la création de ce dicaster. Il est souvent porte-parole lors de conférences internationales sur l'environnement et sa recherche contribue à une meilleure compréhension sur la sauvegarde de la maison commune. Dans son livre « The 10 Green Commandments of Laudato Si », le père Carithodam emploie une méthode théologique pastorale. Voir, juger, agir. Cette méthodologie a été développée par le mouvement Jeunesse ouvrière chrétienne de Belgique dans les années 1920. On la nomme parfois le cercle pastoral ou l'arbre pastoral.
It's very important to see the situation, understand the situation in the light of the gospel, and respond to the situation. And that's what Pope John the 23rd did at the Second Vatican Council. He said, we need to listen to the modern world, to the challenges of today's world.
Laudato Si emploie la même méthode, décrite dans le 15e paragraphe de l'encyclique. En premier lieu, je présenterai un bref aperçu des différents aspects de la crise écologique actuelle. À partir de cet aperçu, je reprendrai certaines raisons qui se dégagent de la tradition judéo-chrétienne afin de donner plus de cohérence à notre engagement en faveur de l'environnement. Nous suivrons les mêmes 3 étapes telles qu'utilisées depuis plus d'1 siècle par la doctrine sociale de l'Église catholique. Commençons par voir, comprendre la crise à laquelle fait face notre maison commune.
For many years, we spoke about environment, but environment is, it's still outside of you, like it doesn't touch you. Whereas Earth is our home, and that makes all the difference. And also it gives you a sense of urgency when your house is on fire. You don't sit back and say, okay, what can I do? You spring into action, because it's your safety, the safety of your dear ones, and in this common home, we all live together as a common family. So as a cosmologist, it made a huge difference for me to begin to see Earth as a home.
Les jeunes comme les aînés prennent conscience que la Terre est notre maison commune et manifestent ensemble leur désir que les dirigeants politiques portent attention à la crise climatique. Greta Thunberg, une remarquable jeune militante suédoise, n'avait que 12 ans lorsque l'accord climatique de Paris a été conclu. À travers les grèves étudiantes ainsi que lors de sa célèbre présentation devant l'ONU, le message de Greta est franc et marquant.
Well, I will not stand aside and watch. I will not be silent while the world is on fire. Will you?
And so the first thing we need to really listen to the cry of the earth and see the cry of the earth. Then, so in the 1980s or so, I'm reminded of Leonard Boff, whose famous book, 1992, if I'm not mistaken, Cry of the Earth, Cry of the Poor. Because he said, and it's interesting, probably his merit was to put both these cries together. But at one stage we realized that many of our brothers and sisters around the world are crying out, famine in Africa or in Asia or many places, and people suffering. And one mistake we made was to keep these two cries separate. I mean, like you would have environmentalists, who would argue about protecting exotic species and who even literally drive thousands of miles to go into a wildlife area and they won't be worried about children dying of hunger or poor people suffering. On the other hand, you have like people concerned about social justice and who thought environmental issues are meant for the elite. It's not about concerned about the poor. And that's, I think was a very crucial mistake we made. And we thought there were two issues. And people like Leonard Boff tried to, link them together. And Pope Francis has really changed the paradigm. First we spoke about, Earth as our common home. That I think is the first paradigm shift that Laudato Si brings in. And the second paradigm shift is that both these cries are connected. And it is very true when this climate crisis, the ones who are suffering are the poorest.
Las redes de conexiones.
Leonardo Boff, célèbre théologien brésilien, est l'auteur de plus de 70 livres portant sur la théologie de la libération, l'écologie et la spiritualité. Il est aussi le récipiendaire du Right Livelihood Award, reconnu comme étant l'alternative du prix Nobel. Le voici en tant qu'invité d'honneur lors d'un webinaire présenté par le Dr. Mark Hathaway du Jesuit Forum de Toronto en mai 2020, le 5e anniversaire de l'encyclique Laudato Si.
Entonces, cuando se habla en ecología, nos remitimos a un nuevo paradigma, es decir, a un nuevo conjunto de ideas, de sueños, de perspectivas que forjan o que están en la base de una forma diferente de relacionarnos con la tierra, con la naturaleza y así garantizar un futuro a nuestra civilización, porque así como estamos no podemos continuar, porque hemos encontrado los límites de la tierra no podemos ir más allá. El Papa llega a decir en su encíclica, es una mentira, dice, pensar que la Tierra tiene bienes y servicios ilimitados que permiten un proyecto de crecimiento ilimitado. Eso es una mentira. La Tierra es un planeta pequeño, ya viejo, con bienes y recursos limitados, y no soporta un proyecto ilimitado. Por eso, por 35 veces dice, hay que cambiar las formas de vida, hay que cambiar las maneras de producir, de distribuir, de consumir. Tenemos que realmente hacer una revisión del camino que hemos hecho y empezar un nuevo comienzo, como dice la Carta de la Tierra.
Dans son encyclique, le pape François dirige notre attention vers de nombreux enjeux écologiques, dont la qualité et l'accès à l'eau, le réchauffement climatique, ainsi que la perte de biodiversité. Examinons où nous en sommes aujourd'hui vis-à-vis ces trois enjeux. Tandis que la qualité de l'eau disponible se détériore constamment, il y a une tendance croissante à certains endroits à privatiser cette ressource limitée, transformée en marchandise sujette aux lois du marché. En réalité, l'accès à l'eau potable et sûre est un droit humain primordial, fondamental et universel, parce qu'il détermine la survie des personnes, et par conséquent, il est une condition pour l'exercice des autres droits humains. Maud Barlow, auteure et militante canadienne et une des fondatrices du Conseil des Canadiens, porte une réflexion sur la crise d'eau fraîche mondiale contemporaine.
Well, there are really two problems that come together around water. One is the actual lack of water itself. We all learned back in about grade 6 that the planet couldn't run out of water, but that's not true. We are polluting it, diverting it, depleting it, over-extracting it, damming it, mismanaging it to the point where we are quickly running out of clean, accessible water. The demand is due within, 10 to 20 years. Demand will outstrip supply by about 40%, which just leaves millions and millions of people without. And then we have reports of, say, like 21 cities in India, for instance, are due to run out, including big cities like Delhi. So, I mean, we're talking a very, very serious issue around the actual water, the ecological crisis. And then there's the human crisis, because, no matter where you live, if you've got money, you'll be able to pay for whatever water you think you need or you want. But more and more people who are disadvantaged, indigenous people, rural people, small communities, villages, poor areas of the world, they're doing without. And the statistics are really quite stunning. A recent UN report that was reported in The Guardian said that right now at least 3 billion people are living in water-stressed areas of the world, but other UN reports say that within 5 to 10 years it could be as many as 2/3 of the world's population living with water stress, because every couple of decades the water itself is going, like the water table is going down.
Le climat est un bien commun appartenant à tous et destiné à tous. Le réseau Action Climat est un organisme non gouvernemental qui chapeaute 120 organisations membres ayant comme mandat la lutte contre les changements climatiques. Ces membres proviennent d'à travers la société civile canadienne. On y retrouve des organismes humanitaires, des syndicats et des groupes religieux. Catherine Abreu, directeur général du réseau Action Climat, discute des impacts du réchauffement climatique.
So when we take a look at the kinds of environmental problems that are facing us today in Canada, climate change is, of course, top of the list. We know that on average, the world has warmed by about 1 degree Celsius. But in Canada, that rate of warming is faster than the global average. We are seeing warming here in Canada about twice that rate. So Canada has warmed by about 2 degrees on average in the last number of decades. And in the north, that rate of warming is tripled. So we've seen 3 degrees of warming in the north of Canada. Our landscape is changing dramatically before us, and that is fundamentally altering the way in which Canadians can live in various parts of the country. And in particular, it's really altering the ability of Indigenous communities to provide for themselves, to interact with their traditions, and to take advantage of their local food supplies.
À cause de nous, des milliers d'espèces ne rendront plus gloire à Dieu par leur existence.
We're probably losing, on average, about 175 unique species every day. Which when you think about, that's just an incredible number of species we're losing. Many people believe that we're really at the beginnings of the sixth great mass extinction of life on the planet. So that's quite incredible that we as one species, and really when you think about it, it's mainly a small percentage of humans and the way we live that's causing the majority of the species loss, how we've had such an impact on the planet. And each species plays a unique role, is the fruit of millions of years of evolution. From a theological point of view, a unique expression of the Creator. And as species disappear, the web of life grows weaker. I mean, each species has its own role, and you can only lose so many before ecosystems start getting affected as well, particularly with keystone species. Just to give an example of that, we know, for instance, in the Pacific Northwest, salmon play a key role in the health of the rainforest. When salmon start disappearing, traditionally what happened is when there was the salmon run, bears and eagles and other animals would prey upon the salmon. They'd leave the carcasses of the salmon in the forest. And that was really the key fertilizer. It was a way of moving nutrients from the sea to the forest. And if you look at the tree rings of these trees now, you'll see that since over the last century, the salmon fishery has grown. The growth rings on the trees are no longer as large. I mean, they're not growing as much as they were. So that's just an example of how losing one species can affect an entire ecosystem.
Lors du montage de ce film, le monde est en pleine pandémie et fait face à la propagation mondiale du coronavirus COVID-19. C'est la pire pandémie depuis la grippe mondiale de 1918. Les scientifiques expliquent l'émergence de maladies transmises aux humains à partir d'animaux, les maladies zoonotiques, en concluant qu'il y a un rapport entre la perte de biodiversité et l'apparition de virus tels le COVID-19.
In 2006, I found one article was where the author was telling that a global pandemic which can really cause havoc around the world and the author was saying it's like a time bomb, just ticking. 2006 they said that, and we know that we have had the Ebola, we have had SARS, we have had MERS. They were all warnings from the natural world, that. I mean, if the planet is not healthy, we cannot be healthy. And deforestation is and there are thousands and thousands of these viruses, we find them in the animals, but they can be passed on to the humans. And Ebola was a case of that, and SARS and MERS, and the latest is a COVID-19. So, and what struck me was, scientists, even 15 years ago, 2006 or so, they began to speak about it, And I don't think COVID-19 will be the last. I mean, probably we might be wiser in controlling better the outbreak of the next pandemic. But then if we keep on destroying our ecosystems, those diseases, those viruses are going to catch on to us. And if I might repeat, I mean, it's again, I think that's the running thread of the Laudato Si', everything is connected. If the ecosystems are not healthy, don't expect us to be healthy.
Un rapport de juillet 2020 du Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement indique que l'augmentation des pandémies zoonotiques est due à la destruction d'habitats naturels tels les forêts vierges.
que hay dos causas principales que han provocado muchos virus, como la Zika, chikungunya, la SARS y otros que vinieron. Se debe fundamentalmente a dos razones, a mi juicio. Primero, la urbanización del mundo, porque 83% de la humanidad vive en ciudades, ya no conoce naturaleza. Entonces se han acercado demasiado, han deforestado, han ocupado todos los espacios, que es una razón. El otro, el agronegocio, ha avanzado sobre las florestas, los bosques, especialmente en Amazonía, que es terrible, y se han acercado, entonces, demasiadamente a esos sitios donde viven millones y millones de bacterias y virus que se sintieron agredidos y han buscado en el ser humano un otro hábitat, porque nosotros hemos destruido el hábitat de ellos, que estaban ahí tranquilos millares de años en sus hábitats. Hemos destruido esto y han pasado al ser humano para encontrar una célula con células con la cual vive. Lo dicen muy bien los astronautas que ven la Tierra desde la Luna o desde sus naves espaciales. Dicen, desde acá no hay diferencia Tierra y humanidad. Es una cosa sola. Entonces, Tierra-humanidad es una unidad compleja y nosotros somos parte de esa naturaleza. Yo diría más, que somos aquella porción de la Tierra que en un dado momento de su complejidad empezó a sentir, empezó a pensar, empezó a amar y a cuidar, y ahí irrumpió el ser humano. Por eso que hombre, homo, viene de humus, tierra buena. Entonces somos tierra, tierra que piensa, tierra que siente, tierra que ama. Pero eso fue olvidado. Era una idea de todas las culturas antiguas. Siempre se entendía la tierra como la gran madre, Magna Mater, Pachamama, Tonantzin, Nana, algo vivo, del cual recibimos todo.
La prochaine étape de notre méthodologie est celle du jugement. Nous devons déterminer l'ampleur de la crise à laquelle fait face notre maison commune et l'analyser en tenant compte des valeurs judéo-chrétiennes. Dans son livre Boiling Point, publié en 2016, Maud Barlow examine la commodification de l'eau par des agents du secteur privé à travers le monde. Elle invente le terme « water justice ».
So the notion of water justice is very much based on the concept of the right to water as opposed to a charity issue. It wasn't included in the 1948 Declaration on Human Rights because nobody thought at the time that water was an issue. But it's a huge issue now, and it really is an important lens to clear up, when we're looking at it, to say that this is a fundamental right and that no one should have to watch their child die of waterborne disease because they can't afford bought water.
Dans The 10 Green Commandments, le père Kuretadam écrit « Notre jugement de la crise révèle que l'abus du monde naturel de la part de l'humanité n'est rien de moins qu'un comportement pécheur. Le 4e commandement vert concerne donc le concept de péché écologique. »
When I cause climate crisis, and my poor brothers and sisters in Bangladesh suffer. And God doesn't want us to mistreat creation. So it is an ecological sin. When I cause a species to go into extinction and God's glory is lessened, and obviously the indigenous communities, for example, suffer on account of that. When I go and build a dam there, or I mine, I start a mining company there, and indigenous people are pushed out. Now, all those are what we call ecological sins. And I would conclude by saying that ecological sin needs to be understood in the context of salvation, that we just don't just save ourselves. We just don't save, not even we as Christians. We save ourselves with the entire creation.
We're in a situation right now globally where we know that in order to hold off the most destructive and irreversible impacts of climate change, that we need to be holding average global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the world scientists tell us that in order to do that, we need to be cutting global emissions in half by 2030 and getting them to zero by 2050. And that means there is no more room for the ongoing expansion of oil and gas production. It also means that those countries that have the most destructive oil, i.e. the highest emitting oil in the world, and that have the greatest ability to explore other sectors for prosperity and job creation, need to be moving away from oil and gas production first. And guess what? Canada falls right into that category. Our oil is some of the highest emitting in the world. And while there are communities in Canada that rely very much on the oil and gas industry and who we have to think about as we're transitioning away from that fossil fuel dependence, for the most part, the Canadian economy can adapt away from an oil and gas industry. Oil and gas is responsible for under 10% of the GDP in Canada. That means we can chart a transition away from oil and gas in this country. We can think about how we are going to be building the sectors of our economy, the industries that will be the source of clean, good jobs in the future, rather than continuing to double down on a polluting industry that we know is volatile and that we cannot count on to give us the prosperity and jobs that we're currently counting on it for into the future.
La troisième et dernière étape de notre méthodologie est d'agir. Suite à une compréhension des enjeux auxquels fait face notre maison commune et suite à un jugement fondé sur nos valeurs judéo-chrétiennes, nous avons maintenant le choix d'agir. Dans ce dernier segment de notre film, nous allons voir quelques exemples d'interventions visant à atténuer ou changer les circonstances de notre crise climatique. Le 1er septembre 2019, 64 congrégations de femmes religieuses au Canada, francophones et anglophones, ont publié une déclaration commune demandant de nos dirigeants politiques qu'ils répondent à la crise climatique et prennent des mesures afin d'éviter ses pires conséquences. Leur déclaration a été inspirée par l'encyclique Laudato Si et appuyée par l'Union internationale des supérieures générales. Selon elle, à titre de religieuse, prendre soin de toute la création de Dieu est une partie essentielle de notre foi.
It served so many purposes. It added the diversity of voices, and yet we worked on one common statement together. And I think really that is going forward what we need to be doing, acting as collectives and not only doing our own statements separately. You know, the idea of emergency got a little bit of airtime in our conversations before the statement was crafted. And some people felt that emergency was not a helpful word. A little bit of this idea of the urgent can hijack the important and get people almost paralyzed. We kept it in the statement, but we also used the statement climate collapse, simply wanting to point out this is dire. And we can have capacity to do something about it together.
La déclaration cite 7 actions concrètes qu'ont prises les congrégations de femmes religieuses afin de combattre la destruction de notre planète. La première parmi la liste est l'action de retirer les portefeuilles de marché boursier des congrégations de tout investissement dans les énergies fossiles pour les rediriger vers des projets d'énergie renouvelable.
I know that many congregations throughout Canada, and beyond Canada, of course, have done that. And so we were inspired by them and decided that it was time to act. But it's something that I think many congregations are looking at or have already done. Our motivation actually comes from love of the earth. That's the ultimate motivation of it. Do we think it will make an impact? Yes, we do. We think that if there are enough groups, and individuals also, shifting away from fossil fuels, that it actually adds more energy to renewable sources. And we know this is already beginning to happen.
Parmi les actions, on y retrouve aussi une adhérence au projet Communauté bleue, qui encourage la notion que l'eau est une ressource sacrée ainsi qu'un bien commun.
But instead of being against something, we decided to have a project that was positive. And the concept at the time, we only thought of it for municipalities and for only Canadian municipalities. We have dozens of Canadian municipalities now that are blue communities, and they agree to protect water as a human right, to protect it as a public trust, so no privatization, and to do away with, phase out bottled water on municipal premises and at municipal events. And it's very exciting. It's spreading across the country, but then it started to spread to other cities around the world. But it also started to move into universities. University of Montreal is a blue community, and faith-based groups. The religious sisters here in Canada have taken it on big time. So has the World Council of Churches, which became a blue community 3 years ago, and has really promoted the whole notion of water as a human right and what is one called to do.
I'll speak personally from our Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph. About 3 years ago, we're meeting, and somebody mentioned Blue Community, and we read something about it. And it was such a fascinating process that the group of us, representing 3 congregations together, within 1 hour had decided we were going to do this together. And the follow-up with that was not just signing a pledge, which is fine. We hired someone half-time to work with us doing education, not only within the congregation, but way beyond the congregation. And interestingly, we're just in the process of hiring this person for more hours, because we think it is something that religious congregations can offer beyond ourselves, and that education piece is so important.
L'élévation du niveau de la mer, par exemple, peut créer des situations d'une extrême gravité si on tient compte du fait que le quart de la population mondiale vit au bord de la mer ou très proche, et que la plupart des mégapoles sont situées en zone côtière. La ville côtière de Halifax, dans la région atlantique, s'engage audacieusement à répondre au changement climatique avec un plan intitulé Halifax 2050. L'objectif de ce plan est une réduction des gaz à effet de serre jusqu'à une valeur nette de 0 d'ici 2050. Les mesures pour y parvenir comprennent la modernisation des bâtiments municipaux, l'ajout de sources d'énergie renouvelables, l'amélioration des réseaux de transport en commun et transport actif et l'ajustement à la hausse du niveau de la mer. L'élévation du niveau de la mer et l'occurrence plus fréquente des tempêtes ont endommagé les structures côtières le long d'un cours d'eau nommé Northwest Arm au sud de la ville. Par contre, la municipalité s'adapte.
Halifax is experiencing sea level rise, and we have been for some time, and we track it, and we also predict what's going to happen in the future. We're also subsiding as a landmass, so that's causing even kind of higher levels. The seawall along the Northwest Arm in Fleming Park was in a state of disrepair from some continuous damage from the ocean, from storms and high winds and strong waves. And so something needed to be done. And they came up with a solution, which is natural granite wall, because they knew it would be strong enough. They didn't have to raise it as high as if it had been some other types of materials. And you can have waves over top it, and it allowed us not to have to put a giant railing up along the water. It's just a path that everybody can enjoy and go down to the beach. And it was really well received by the community. Net zero by 2050 is achievable if everybody truly commits to it. And I think a real hallmark of this climate plan was the stakeholder engagement and really approaching all of the work through a lens of equity and inclusion, because on the adaptation side, we know that our vulnerable populations and communities experience the negative impacts of climate first and worst. And so we really want to make sure that we're designing our programs and our policies and all of the work that we do with that in mind, and making sure that we prioritize those most vulnerable first and foremost.
La foi et le bien commun est un réseau interreligieux national ayant comme mandat d'assister et d'encourager les congrégations religieuses et groupes spirituels de toutes sortes à militer pour assurer la durabilité des communautés, l'efficacité énergétique, la santé de nos écosystèmes et la justice climatique.
Every faith community speaks to the responsibility of taking care of the planet that we live on. And it was one of the inspirations for the Green Rule poster that was created by Faith in the Common Good. It was also inspired by the Golden Rule poster that was created by Scarborough Missions. Really what we wanted to show the common theme around caring for our environment. And that's essentially why it is multi-faith. It's intentionally intercultural, interfaith, multi-faith in our organization and objectives because that reflects the Canadian landscape. Laudato Si is both filled with inspiration and action. At Faith in the Common Good, we have two Catholic programs underneath our umbrella. One is Caring for Our Common Home, and the second is the Global Climate Catholic Movement, the Canadian chapter. Both of these use Laudato Si as the inspiration for the programming that they develop.
Le projet Empreinte fidèle est un partenariat important forgé entre la foi et le bien commun et l'Église unie du Canada. Il s'agit d'un programme national géré par l'Église unie qui offre des bourses envers les congrégations visant à réduire leurs émissions de carbone de 80% d'ici 2050.
So our first focus will be to engage with 500 congregations by 2025 to improve the energy efficiency of their buildings and to share lessons they can take into their homes and workplaces.
Le cri de la terre et le cri des pauvres sont les mêmes. Ce thème exprimé clairement dans l'encyclique Laudato Si est répété aussi par le Réseau d'action climatique et sa campagne pour une relance économique juste et un New Deal vert suite à la dévastation du COVID-19. Les scientifiques, les militants climatiques et les gens de foi s'unissent pour nous faire entendre le cri de la terre et le cri des pauvres ensemble.
This campaign put forward 6 guiding principles that should inform all government's actions as they continue to respond to and then build back from the COVID-19 pandemic. And these are principles that are about putting human rights, human dignity, and the rights and the well-being of the natural world first, about putting people over profit, putting people and the planet over profit. The Just Recovery work builds on the work that we were already really involved in the Green New Deal campaign. And the Green New Deal campaign in the US and Canada, now in the EU and many European countries, we've been seeing it really spread like wildfire around the world, is a process that looks at developing policies to confront climate change and other ecological crises at hand in a way that's about putting people at the center.
Le père Kurithodam termine son livre avec le 10e commandement vert, la cultivation de vertus écologiques. Il offre ici une réflexion sur la première et la dernière de ces vertus.
The first virtue is praise, and that is the spirit of Laudato Si. May God be praised. And the last virtue is humility, and humus in Latin is Adama in Hebrew, that we return to Mother Earth. And I think humility is the mother of all ecological virtues. That when we return to the earth with humility, as Adama, as children, as earthlings, we will care for the earth with the love of children as for a mother.